See, I'm giving you plenty of reasons to watch the live show here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/footballguys, DOTCOM, because I think either Bloom, and I'm going to use a reference you probably don't get, although if you do, I love you even more. My hair is either Giorgio Tsoukalos from Ancient Aliens. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. Or my hair is like Jeremy Johns from YouTube, the movie critic. So now if I'm going to do my Jeremy Johns impression, well, I got to talk with my hands like this because that's all that Jeremy Johns does. Although I watch him every single day when he reviews a movie. So I don't know, Bloom. Our listeners, our viewers can decide.
Is that just some sort of distress signal? Like there was a really good. Now you gave me an opening here to talk about some really obscure stuff. Plan 10 from Outer Space, not Plan 9 from Outer Space. Plan 10 from Outer Space was a film, like a lighthearted Nancy Drew kind of story about the Mormon Church in Utah, and it was extremely well received in Salt Lake City, open in Salt Lake City. And there's something about using your arms to do distress signals that reminded me of. So we'll have to invent that. Cease. It's like the blink twice if you're being held captive kind of thing.
Right. And my producer mind is like GTF. GTF. In the radio industry, we call that get to business.
Yeah.
I can't say the other thing. Sorry, Joe. Let's get to business when it comes to the Oakland Raiders. They had a great draft. Now, people are going to pan Clelin Ferrell in the first round at number 4 overall, and shockwaves through the, why wasn't it Josh Allen? Like all these sorts of things. But it's not like that. It wasn't the Texans. It's not that Ferrell wasn't a first rounder. Now, maybe in the teens, maybe. But, okay, they found their guy. They identified their guy. They didn't tell anybody. And they got their guy. So Clelin Ferrell, number 4 overall, a good player at the defensive end from Clemson. So let's give him some credit for that. And don't just look at that pick and pan them. Look at everything else that they got. Everything else. With 3 first rounders. If I were to say to you, Clelin Ferrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, before the draft, 3 first rounders, you'd be like, interesting. Now, how did they get them? Obviously, we knew they had number 4 overall. But if you just said before the draft, they could get Clelin Ferrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, everyone would say, well, a hell of a draft. What a great way to start. Way to go, Raiders. Well, Josh Jacobs now, Marshawn Lynch retiring. Josh Jacobs steps in. I know they picked up Doug Martin because Isaiah Crowell got hurt with an Achilles injury, but Josh Jacobs is the man. Great story, by the way. Great young man. So you get to root for this guy now as a Raiders or as an NFL fan and watch his story in the National Football League with that size, with his swiftness as a runner. He will be their featured back and a very exciting one at that. Now, continuing on past the first round, Trayvon Mullen, cornerback from Clemson, another Clemson defensive piece. Okay, second round, good pick, Max Crosby, edge player from Eastern Michigan. There's a guy who can get after the quarterback. Okay, fourth rounder, Isaiah Johnson, cornerback from Houston. Foster Moreau in the 4th round, tight end from LSU. And Moreau, when you look at his numbers from LSU, you're going to be like, oh, but has a very kind of a sneaky athletic profile. At least that's what he showed off at the Senior Bowl. And he looked like one of those players, like maybe there's a little bit more there than what we saw in college. And we know with tight ends, that could certainly be the case. Hunter Renfrow, again, Senior Bowl, reminds me of a young Brandon Stokely, wide receiver from Clemson in the 5th round. This guy they're going to use all over the field. Now, you'll categorize him as a slot receiver. I think that's actually his best position because of his quickness and his ability to run underneath routes. But Hunter Renfrow, we're already hearing positive reports out of Oakland. Rookie minicamp, they're going to use him in all sorts of ways. Okay, cool. They got a revamped wide receiver core. When you got Antonio Brown, Terrell Williams, you're good to go. Let Hunter Renfrow run around underneath. And then finally, Prairie View A&M's Quentin Bell in the 7th round. Yeah, at the end of the day, Mike Mayock, John Gruden, good job.
It's a good draft. It's a good draft because it has conceptual continuity. It's a good draft because you see what they prioritize, you see what they want to build their team around, and they made a draft to do that. Now, before this is a long list, Cease, of all of the prelude up to this draft, right? They trade Amari Cooper for first rounder. They trade Khalil Mack, get a first rounder. They trade a 3rd and a 5th rounder for Antonio Brown. They also moved. They moved up. They moved down. They Also traded a 5th rounder for AJ McCarron. This is not a team sitting on their laurels when it comes to using their draft capital or getting draft capital. Football character, leaders, intense players, high motor players. This is the theme here. And okay, they didn't trade down. They got Cleveland Farrell. If you watch his 2017 tape, you might understand a little bit more. He was always in the first round mix and just a high floor player, instant starter, instant contributor in all facets of the game. Maybe not as flashy or as high a ceiling as a pure edge rusher as Nick Bosa, or even in terms of ceiling like Brian Burns, but a producer, a guy that is a glue player. Josh Jacobs, a glue player. Best receiving back, best passing down back in this draft. Also a power back, barely used at Alabama and compared to some of these other guys like David Montgomery or Devin Singletary, who absorbed a lot of hits already. And love his story. His hunger is never going to diminish. Jonathan Abram, just a mean customer. And, see, old school football, right, was you're coming over the middle, you're going to remember me the next time you come over the middle, right? Mm-hmm. Jonathan Abram isn't necessarily a sticky coverage guy, but he's going to have attitude. He's going to add attitude and a great box safety. So they get those guys. And then they get Trayvon Mullen. And look, where you didn't like that they took Cleveland Farrell at 4 instead of trading down. They traded down twice before they took Mullen. So they trade down twice. They get their guy. And Mullen is a long outside corner. He's athletic enough. There's more there for him to grow into. Max Crosby, athletic, oozing athleticism, needs. And here's how the pieces fit together, right? Max Crosby oozes athleticism as an edge rusher, but needs that glass eater, stout mentality. Well, you got someone like Cleveland Farrell. You can watch the dude be like him. Watch what that guy does. Johnson, they get a corner who's got a lot of upside, a former receiver. So we talk about Mecole Hardman. He's new to the receiver position. Here's a guy that's new to the cornerback position, but has all kinds of athleticism growing to. Love the Foster Moreau pick. Our Steelers got Zach Gentry.
Wrong one.
I mean, this is where take Benny Snell in the 5th round so you can take Foster Moreau in the 4th, please. Benny Snell was not the guy you had to get in this draft. Foster Moreau, the Steelers had gotten Foster Moreau. Love this pick, as you said. Not necessarily the most utilized as a receiver, but there's something there, a good blocker, and fits in with the ethos of this team. Hunter Renfrow, a slot receiver extraordinaire. That's all he'll ever be. He's not necessarily a big play slot like Brian Switzer, the guy they traded and got some draft capital in the 5th. But Renfrow is going to fit. And, they love those Clemson guys. They love those winners. Quentin Bell, Mike Mayock stumped the truck. The NFL Network truck whenever they took Quentin Bell. He was a wide receiver and converted to defensive end and still kept his wide receiver speed and athleticism. So like a true project, but that's what you use a 7th round pick for. And it's always fun when you stump the truck.
It's like Mayock could have sent a note to Chad Ryder, our dear friend for NFL Network, who's working in the truck, who, by the way, worked with Mayock closely for the NFL Network. It's like, can't send Chad a note? Like, seriously, can't be like, hey, heads up, we're going
little here. Professional courtesy.
Exactly. Come on, Mayock. Damn it, Janet, I love you. No, actually, what I love is Keelan Doss. UC Davis wide receiver. I mean, hell of a route runner, very nuanced at the position. Not the fastest guy. Not going to win with quickness, but he's going to win with guile. He's got great ball skills. Like Keelan Doss, undrafted. Again, Raiders, good job.
Yeah, they did an excellent job with their undrafted free agents too. And Doss, I was going to mention Doss, but since you already mentioned him, I'll also mention that they coached him at the Senior Bowl. And you like teams that are eager to coach at the Senior Bowl, and then they use what they learned at the Senior Bowl to take players they like or to sign them after the draft and recruit them. They also got Tyler Romer, an offensive tackle who certainly would be considered draftable based on tape, got suspended at the end of the year, and we'll see. But he looks like a potential starting tackle in the NFL. He got him as an undrafted free agent. Tavon Coney, a 2-down run stuffer, didn't test well. Like Vontae's perfect. The clock is already ticking on how long before he gets suspended or hurt or who knows what. And they got Alec Ingold. And look, a fullback fit in 2019 NFL. I don't know, but when you get one of the best fullbacks in the draft class as an undrafted free agent, solid pickup.
It's a good pickup. Let's talk about a pickup that everyone was projecting, and this is one at the end of the 1st round. Like you can do it with Kyler Murray or Nick Bosa, right? Like, oh, I know they're going to take Nick Bosa. I know they're going to take Kyler Murray. Well, I think every mock draft I had, Jerry Tillery had the Chargers. Why? Because they got pushed around on the run game. Tillery will destroy that. He will stop that. You don't push this guy around. He is that big man, eat up double teams, run stuffer in the middle from Notre Dame. It's a perfect pick. It's a perfect connection for this team and a perfect spot to take Jerry Tillery first round. Good job, Chargers. Nasir Adderley, safety from Delaware, was their second round pick. Trey Pipkins, tackle from Sioux Falls, their third round pick. Drew Tranquil, linebacker from Notre Dame, got double up on the Fighting Irish there. Fourth round pick. Fifth round pick, Easton Stick, quarterback from North Dakota State. Now, this is going to be very interesting because the Broncos picked up Brett Rippon undrafted. Now, paid him quite a bit. We'll get to Brett Rippon in a little bit, but I saw these two at the Shrine game. And whereas Easton Stick was the kind of the equal to Brett Rippon on the first day, Stick fell apart. Now, again, this is one of those things I think somebody wrote about this pre-draft, Bloom, where like they've never seen a person, the film looks so different from in person. Because I was excited about Easton Stick when I went to Tampa, and then I saw him during the week. I was like, "Oh God!" Like it's just he was like This sounds bad, and I like Easton Stick, but I'll say it anyway. He was the Daniel Jones of the Shrine game, where it's like, "Oh my God, the other guy doesn't belong." And whereas Brett Rippon was like Mr. Steady Eddie. Anyway, we'll get to it. Fifth round pick, quarterback, Phillip Rivers successor, blah blah blah. Okay, Miki Agbule, linebacker, Houston, round 6. Cortez Broughton, defensive tackle from Cincinnati. So lots of defensive help here for the Chargers.
So Cease, in the notes for these shows, every team I have a little section on the moves they made to lead up to these picks, or the moves they made during the draft with these picks, or maybe the picks in the future they picked up during this draft. The Chargers didn't do anything. they didn't have any extra picks. They didn't gain any extra picks. They didn't trade down. They didn't trade up. But we give them an A for this draft because just like last year, the universe conspired with them for perfect picks in the first and second round. Well, I don't know if it's the second round being perfect last year, but their first round pick when Derwin James fell to them, we all just said it's still to this day. You watch Derwin James, and you say, how did he fall to the 17th pick? Now, I'm not saying how did Jerry Tillery fall to the 28th pick, or how did Nasir Adderley fall, to the 61st pick or something like that. But these are the ideal players for the Chargers. This is exactly what they needed. Jerry Tillery and the disruption and the stout play that he has is exactly what they needed on the defensive line. I mean, it was perfect to have everything fall into place. I think if the Colts had not traded down, maybe Tillery would have went there. Adderley, they were lucky that no one got up ahead of them for him. I mean, this is the ideal guy to pair up with Derwin James. I mean, these two guys riding together in that secondary for years and years to come. Gus Bradley. I mean, you think of Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor, it's beautiful, beautiful picks for this team. After that, they get a tackle from Sioux Falls, Trey Pipkins, a project that you project as a start. At least wasn't Titus Howard in the first. Drew Tranquil is more of an effort, energy, try hard guy. I think maybe they reached for him. Easton Stick, it's kind of like, and it's funny you say Daniel Jones because you saw the thing that at least one team asked Daniel Jones to work out as a tight end. Maybe Easton Stick will be a tight. Easton Stick and Trace McSorley. Who lasts longest at the quarterback position? Trace McSorley, Easton Stick, or Daniel Jones? Now, really, we shouldn't be piling on like that. Egbule has lots of upside. Love these third-day picks that can develop. Broughton, another one of these picks, the defensive tackle who can develop over time. But Egbule is interesting, coming from Houston, where one of my favorite guys, Tyus Bauer, came from. Still waiting for him to break out with Baltimore. But Egbule offers a lot of the same athletic traits as Bowser, even farther behind as a player than Bowser was. But remember, Bowser went in the second round. So Egbule is a name just to remember as a player that 2-3 years down the line could vastly outperform his 6th round, number 200 overall draft capital.
If I were to say wide receiver, you would say
Clemson.
Trevian Thompson, wide receiver from Clemson. Now, Dabo Sweeney said this guy is Jaron Brown, even more talented. Like, I don't care if it's Adam Humphries or Jaron Brown or whoever. Like, if you're buried at Clemson, I'm watching you if you play wide receiver. Like, I don't care. I mean, fifth on the depth chart. Like, I just don't care. If you played wide receiver at Clemson, I want to watch you in the pros. So Chargers, undrafted, Trevian Thompson, wide receiver from Clemson. And if Dabo Sweeney is saying he's Jerron Brown, but more talented, I'm definitely watching.
Yeah, I'm watching that. Daniel Helm, Daniel Jones is one of his favorite targets at Duke. A move tight end, receiving tight end, athletic, some developmental possibilities there too.
All right, Kansas City. This one was an interesting one to say the least. Now, we have to bring up the Tyreek Hill situation and whatever the hell is going to happen with that. But you saw that this draft was reactionary to that, in my opinion. And maybe you believe differently, Bloom, but I don't think they take Mecole Hardman if Tyreek Hill isn't maybe going to be kicked off the team or suspended forever, or who the hell knows? Maybe he's clear and everything's fine or whatever. Like, it makes me sick actually discussing what happened there, although we do have to discuss it because it's part of the news item here with the Kansas City Chiefs. But Mecole Hardman, their speedy wide receiver from Georgia, and Tyreek Hill replacement is their first pick. So Chiefs, interesting. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this one. Thornhill, safety Virginia, up next. Kalen Saunders, third round, defensive tackle, Western Illinois. Rashad Fenton, cornerback, South Carolina in the sixth. Darwin Thompson, running back from Utah State. He's kind of a 200-pound grinder, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing. But if you want to talk about a guy that can live between the tackles, there's Darwin Thompson, catch a few passes as well. Sixth rounder, end of the bench. We'll see what happens. And then a guard from Illinois, Nick Allegretti in the seventh round. But Bloom, this one comes down to reaction and kind of, I think it was Thursday, right? When that audio came out. Like, I was in Nashville. All of a sudden, Twitter's blowing up because there's audio of Tyreek Hill saying a bunch of awful stuff, and we got to talk about it.
Yeah, we do. And they're planning, I would expect, on him not being around, releasing him. You know, there was some talk, I can't remember who it was, that said that he may still surface in the league again. Probably not going to be for Kansas City. They trade the first round pick and more to get Frank Clark. Remember, they get a second round next year for D Ford, to give up that second rounder next year. Not that exact second rounder, but a second rounder. They got the now, what helps them here is they had an extra second round pick for Marcus Peters. And they also gave up a fourth round pick to get Reggie Ragland, but they move up for Hardman, and that's the key of the draft here. And I'm fine with it. Look, other than Hollywood Brown, who they weren't going to get, Hardman maps the best to Tyreek Hill's strengths and style of play. And I mentioned him at least once, maybe twice on the shows before the draft, of saying, if you're looking for a replacement for Hill, Hardman could be that guy. And I also said, if you're looking for the discount Hollywood Brown, Hardman is that guy. And again, new to the position, speed, quickness, even you see him sometimes manipulate the defensive back, even though he's new to the position. This could be really exciting. Could be really exciting, certainly for Dynasty. I have him very high in Dynasty rookie rankings, but even this year, because you're putting a chip on Pat Mahomes, you're putting a chip on this passing game. They get Thornhill, unbelievable athlete. You know, think Byron Jones when Byron Jones came out, like those kind of, maybe not quite the Byron Jones level, because that's like all-time kind of numbers. Tremendous numbers. Eric Berry is gone. Thornhill's interesting. Saunders. What you like about Kalen Saunders here? Disruption is production. Hey, Josh Norris. Disruption is production. He's a disruptive player inside. They get, I don't know about the other picks. We'll talk about Thompson, but Fenton is a zone corner. I don't know. I didn't like that pick. Allegretti, he's on that side of he can play. He's smart. He's experienced. Maybe he doesn't have a lot of upside, but could give you some depth. Darwin Thompson, I just want to say this. Excellent fantasy situation. Like, we just plug and play. KC running backs, right? Plug and play, the production comes. By far an unsettled situation. You have Damian Williams. Okay, he was good at the end of the year, and they gave him a modest extension. You have Carlos Hyde. They gave a modest contract. But that they spend a pick on Darwin Thompson. They like Darwin Thompson. And Matt Waldman, so I think we've talked about this. I'm not sure. Maybe not. Maybe you haven't heard this. When the Chiefs drafted Thompson, Matt Waldman used 5 exclamation points and caps whenever he tweeted out about it. When does Matt Waldman use 5 exclamation points? Ever.
Hardly ever, right?
About anything. So keep Darwin Thompson in the back of your mind, and another running back we're about to talk about. We talk about their excellent undrafted free agents.
Okay, running backs, or excuse me, the undrafted free agents for the Kansas City Chiefs include 3 quarterbacks. Interesting. Kyle Shermer worked from under center a lot, so that's his hallmark from Vandy. It really is.
Yeah.
Jamal Custis, wide receiver, Syracuse. Like, there's very interesting names here, Bloom. I'm gonna leave the running back for you though.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of interesting names at wide receiver, first of all.
Yes.
Jamal Custis is massive. Syracuse is in the house. They gave him a lot of money. They gave Cody Thompson from Toledo Rockets, cease. $50K, I guaranteed, I think. And then they also got Davis, the wide receiver from Michigan State, who was hurt, that certainly should stay on our radar, maybe not this year, but down the line. So Thompson's more of a slot receiver, Custis massive outside receiver. But there's a lot of targets up for grabs here with Tyreek Hill likely gone, and Sammy Watkins' injury history. Demarcus Robinson still named to remember. So let's watch these guys. I also want to mention Mark Fields, a speedy nickel corner type from Clemson. You get a Clemson guy, and then James Williams. Now, James Williams is a James White kind of player at running back. A tremendous receiver out of the backfield. Maybe not the best blocker out of the backfield. And also a tough-minded runner, a runner who gets yards after contact, a resourceful runner, a runner that at times you see some plays that remind you of, say, Devin Singletary or David Montgomery in the way that he inextricably somehow defeats a tackle or keeps his balance after contact. So this is a nice player. And again, because of this situation being so productive, it wouldn't be shocking at all to be talking about Darwin Thompson as the waiver wire pickup in week 2, or maybe James Williams as the waiver wire pickup in week 2, because these players both fit in the current NFL. They fit in this offense. And, Damian Williams, Carlos Hyde aren't necessarily high hurdles to overcome.
It's a Broncos show, so here we go, Denver Broncos. Now, the 2018 class was incredible for this team, and I'm going to throw Phillip Lindsay in that class because he was undrafted last year and went to the Pro Bowl, first offensive player undrafted as a rookie to do that. But they had to do it for an encore, and I always said, like, what's Elway going to do for an encore? Because you can't have 2018 after horrible drafts, 15, 16, 17, just god-awful drafts for 3 years. You want to know why things fell apart? You want to know why the Denver Broncos had back-to-back losing seasons for the first time since 1972? Why? Because your core was rotten. You build your core through the draft. So 2018, awesome. You had to do it again and be better if you could. They might have done that in the 2019 NFL draft. Now, number 10 overall, they move back to number 20. They trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers get Devin Bush. Broncos trade back, they get Noah Fant. Now, they need this. They need this, man, because Julius Thomas was the last tight end worth a damn in Denver. And people will say, well, that was largely just Peyton. Okay, go back to Shannon Sharp then. I don't care. But just know this, that everything that they've tried, including Jeff Hireman, all these tight ends they've brought through here, Jake Butt can't stay healthy. Troy Fumagalli looked like a high school prospect when I saw him at minicamp, Bloom, at OTAs a couple of weeks ago. Like, he's got great hands, but he's incredibly tiny. So Noah Fant there as that receiving weapon, and make no doubt about it, that's what he is, a receiving weapon. This was a Joe Flacco pick. There were little birdies that were suggesting that whenever I would inquire, like, what are the Broncos really going to do? Because up to that point, nobody knew. I thought Elway did a great job in kind of hiding or disguising where he was going to go. A lot of mock drafts were like, they're going to take Drew Lock at 10. We'll get to him in a little bit. And then about a week before the draft, Todd McShay is like, you know what, guys? I don't think quarterback's a high priority. And McShay was talking to people because that had been out there like under the radar. I think and everybody I ran into, combine, whatever, everybody would reach out. They're like, what are the Broncos going to? I'd always say no quarterback at 10. I did 4 mock drafts. I never had the Broncos taking a quarterback at 10. That wasn't their priority at 10. They move back. They get Noah Fant. It's great. I think he gets 50 catches this year. That is a number that is greater than Jeff Hireman's had in his 4-year NFL career. It's 49 for Jeff Hireman. So Hireman goes to be the blocker. Fant's that receiving weapon. And if the last time that Joe Flacco started a full season, he made Biggity Ben Watson at 37 years old, a 60-catch tight end, what's he going to do with a talent like Fant? Noah Fant to me is Evan Ingram. So look at Ingram's rookie season. I could project those numbers quite easily for Noah Fant. round 2 from Wiggins, Colorado, which isn't that far from Grover, by the way. And my sister reminded me that we played Wiggins in girls basketball. I never played against Wiggins. They played 11-man football, but the lowest level in Colorado. Anyway, me and Dalton, they're boys. We're buddies. Dalton Reisner, tackle from Kansas State. Outstanding. I think he can play right tackle, but they got Jawan James to do that. So he's going to start at guard, probably left guard next to Garrett Bowles. That might help out Garrett Bowles because he needs the help. Drew Lock. They trade up in the second round because they had 52, I think. So they move up 10 spots. They go to 42, and they get Drew Lock, quarterback from Mizzou. Now, the positives on Drew Lock, big arm and leadership. Like, he's a really good kid. I'm not saying I know Drew Lock, but I kind of know his family a little bit just from conversations with them this offseason, seeing him at the Senior Bowl, Combine, etc. Like, Drew Lock, there's quite a bit to like about that big arm, that presence. He carries himself as a quarterback. And he also isn't blind to what he has to change. Him and I, every time I talk to Drew Lock, I think we talk about his feet because his footwork has been a work in progress. Like, his footwork is maddeningly inconsistent. What else is inconsistent with Drew Lock is his release point. He can sidearm it, and he brings it up as a positive because it is technically, but it'd be like, I can sidearm it and like Pat Mahomes. That's cool, but Mahomes does it on purpose. Lock does it just randomly. Like, his arm will just drop for no apparent reason. I think that's why he had more batted passes than Kyler Murray last year. But, like, he's got to clean up his feet. He's got to make sure his release point's over his head. Like, there's a lot to do here with Drew Lock. But you get him in the second round. You don't get him at 10. I think that's simply fantastic for this team because there's no pressure. This isn't a Paxton Lynch situation where you're going to look really bad if the guy doesn't do anything. He's a second-round pick, and he's your second-round pick. So he gets to come in. Joe Flacco says he's the understood quarterback. Okay, Joe, we'll get it done. So that way Drew Lock can sit behind you and continue to learn and develop because that's what he needs to do. So Drew Lock at 42, great pick. Drew Lock at 10, awful pick. Drew Lock at 42, really good pick. Draymond Jones, third rounder, defensive tackle, Ohio State. He was my number 50 player. So they got 4 of my top 50 in this draft with their first 4 picks. Outstanding. Justin Hollins, edge player from Oregon. I rated him as a pass rusher. John Elway came out in his post-draft press conference, said he's going to play inside linebacker. I don't see it, but whatever. And then Juwan Winfrey, wide receiver from CU. Now, he was at the local pro day. There were some people saying, these are agent types, we'll say that say like he could have like Philip Lindsay, like impact. No. But if you want to talk about a late round, I had him an undrafted grade, but priority free agent. Juwan Winfrey has an athletic profile you didn't get to see at CU because of a high ankle sprain this last year. So interesting pick at wide receiver. They need some better depth. But overall, 2018 class, awesome. 2019, smashing. Now we'll see if they can get it done.
Yeah, I'm glad at least you mentioned that the drafts have been terrible. This one's better. And, they lead off getting the second and third round pick to move down so they can get Noah Fant. I don't love from a fantasy or pure production perspective, or even a developmental perspective, Denver as an organization for Fant. And I hear you on Evan Ingram. Athletically, I think he can map well to Ingram. Athletically, I think he maps well to Jared
even in
Cook.
A Scangarello offense, and even with Joe Flacco, I love tight ends throwing the ball.
That's a good point that we haven't seen this offense yet. And we haven't seen an offense with this quarterback yet. So we have to have some room. I'm thinking of the Broncos offenses that we've seen haven't been great places for these types of players to develop, where there's a player where you say all of the athletic traits are there. Maybe, Noah Fant is not ever going to make a lot happen after the catch. Noah Fant might not be the best contested catch guy, but as a pure mismatch player based on the kinds of players he's going to face in the NFL, he's excellent. Now you need to be creative with your scheme, your play designs, and your play calls to harvest that because I think Jared Cook is a good comparison here, where how many years do we see? Sometimes you see breathtaking plays from Jared Cook as a young Jared Cook athletically, but consistency of usage, Jeff Fisher, was a problem. So we'll see, but you can't necessarily argue with the pick in terms of the commodity they get when they trade down. And certainly if Fant was a player they were going to take at 10, I don't think they would have taken him over Bush. So I guess that's not even if. Let's just forget about that. Also, I should mention They give up a 4th and a 6th to get Locke, which is fine because he's a 2nd-round pick. And the good news here with Locke is they won't rush him. There's no pressure to put him on the field, and that's what Locke needs because Locke has the tools. He needs to get his mind right about the way he plays the position, tightened up, taking the easy plays. They give up a 4th to get Flacco. They got a 4th for Demaryius Thomas. They got Dakota Watson. They got a pick for or move up for Trevor Siemian that kind of helped with that. They actually traded away their punter last year and got a pick, right? Riley Dixon. And they gave up a pick for Alan Barbary, which I feel like Alan Barbary was like a Draft Guys TV guy or something.
He
right?
was. I think so. Yeah. Or at least we had him on the Audible, I think.
Yeah.
I have his
like
number.
That.
When the Broncos picked him up last year, I looked through my contacts. I was like, hey, you guys want to talk to Alan Barber?
Yeah.
Like, here's his number. So
at least they're active. Dalton Risner's great. I mean, this is a guy. If he would have went to the first round, if the Texans had taken Risner instead of Titus Howard, we'd say, okay.
Yeah, okay.
I get it. And Risner, like you said, put him next to Garrett Bowles. Has had some ups and downs. What's great to keep in the background, who's in the background of this pick? Mike Munchak. And Atlanta talked about getting the position coaches, even the strength and conditioning coach in the room about their offensive line picks in the first round. Risner's a 2nd-round pick. But if you hear or find this would be a good question for you, Cease, to ask, or you may already know the answer. Like if Munchak gave the stamp of approval for Risner, and
yes.
you love this pick.
He did.
If he's saying, yeah, get that guy, you love this pick. And then, that's the draft, really, Fant and Risner and Locke. But they get Draymond Jones, a one-gapper penetrator, a guy that, I might have liked the version of this player that the Cowboys got around earlier, and Tristan Hill, that kind of player, though. Holland's developmental pass rusher, you give him time. And then Winfrey, not flashy, solid route runner, he can block. He can win a contested ball. Maybe, a guy that, like you said, the ceiling isn't as high as Philip Lindsay, but a player that I think absolutely their experience with Philip Lindsay informed them when they said, we're not going to wait to see if he goes undrafted. We're actually going to move up and get him.
There was considerations for Dalton Risner at 20, and there's also considerations of moving back into the first round, but they felt that they would have him fall to him, and they did, and he did. So great pick. Here, I'll start using my arms again. Great pick. As we talk about,
is everything okay?
Yeah, it's okay. The undrafted free agents for the Broncos, we should probably talk about Brett Rippon the most. Devontae Jackson was interesting to me, the West Virginia running back, but he's tiny. He's like 175 pounds. And by the way, look at the backs on the roster. There's not that many. And 2 of them, Khalfani Muhammad, who is here already, and then Devontae Jackson are both 175 pounds. And then you've got Devontae Booker, Royce Freeman, and Philip Lindsay. I'd still be looking for running back help if I was this team. But anyway, Brett Rippon is there. I think it's a horrible, stupid take to say, like, Rippon is going to be better than Drew Lock because Rippon worked from under center. And yes, Bloom, unfortunately, that is a take that is being floated around out here. And it's awful. It's terrible because Brett Rippon has skill. He is certainly accurate short to intermediate wise. He did have 50 so passing attempts from under center last year. I've tweeted out those numbers. Drew Lock had 5. So he's got a leg up in terms of like dropping back and all those sorts of things. But having seen both of these players in back-to-back weeks, and that's not like all-star games mean everything, but it does mean something. When you see Brett Rippon, you go, like he's a spot starter. He'll be a great backup. He'll play 10 years. If you wanted to argue with me like Brett Rippon could play longer than Drew Lock, okay, I'll hear that. But Brett Rippon by no means has that upside that Drew Lock has. Imagine if Jay Cutler cared. That's my comparison for Drew Lock. So Brett Rippon is a really good acquisition for the Broncos. You should probably keep him around as a third-team quarterback. And yes, keep 3 QBs. Don't let someone steal him away from you. But I don't see at this point, I'm going to see these guys tomorrow out at Dove Valley, but like I think it's ridiculous to say like Brett Rippon will be better than Drew Lock in the end. Drew Lock has incredible upside. Brett Rippon has a lower ceiling, but perhaps a higher floor.
Yeah, I think in some ways, Cease, would you say that Rippon and Locke are almost at the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of developmental quarterbacks? Where with Locke, it's what he can be. It's the parts that you eventually want to make the sum. And Rippon already is probably a better sum than his parts would indicate. And when you see Boise State, you think Kellen Moore, right? Mm-hmm. And Kellen Moore is now the quarterback coach for the Cowboys. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, maybe this is almost a player to bring in to help Drew Lock, right? Like you have Rippon is going to be your perfect extension of the coach quarterback, right? He's going to take the scheme from the chalkboard to the field, you know. With Locke, he's not that mentally taught and just, you know, yes sir, no sir. He's got a looseness to his game. So if you can combine those guys, you get that. Now, that being said, if Locke is a bust, and Locke has some bust risk, Rippon becomes an interesting kind of Kirk Cousins fallback. But I think to say that he's like the best case scenario for Drew Lock far surpasses the best case scenario for Brett Rippon. But as you said, the worst case scenario for Rippon is higher than the worst case scenario for Lock, and maybe bringing them both in together helps Drew Lock. So I understand why they threw money at Brett Rippon. I think this is going to be an interesting story to watch develop, and it may be one that does eventually test, just like Washington got tested, test the Broncos to say, which of these two guys gives you a better chance to win this game? And that's if Locke, his development is lagging. But maybe having Rippon there and having that, you know, it's like in class, you see the person next to you that's got their homework done and can raise their hand when the teacher asks a question and everything, and hopefully makes you want to be that guy too.
Right? I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
We didn't go too long on this episode, I don't think, right?
No, it's good because when you're positive, I think when you're positive, maybe you know, you deliver the message in a punchy, taut kind of way. We get to F.
There you go. I love when you use taut.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of your hiney. Anyway,
yeah, like the quarter bouncing off of the made bed, you know.
Everyone's like, oh my God, this took a turn. Anyway, that's a wrap for the Audible. That is a wrap for this show and our series, Bloom. It always feels good to get back in the calendar.
Mm-hmm. It does. And like you said, the calendar of OTAs is already underway. Another interesting twist to the calendar with comp picks is this third wave of free agency that has better names than we usually see after the draft. Then we're going to get to team OTAs when the veterans are doing more. We're learning more about these new offenses. It's like you will see. Tell us about the Gangarello offense with Joe Flacco, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It never gives us a lack to talk about. Y'all never have a lack of patience and attention to give us to allow us to talk about it. So it's so much fun to take this trip around the calendar, around the sun with y'all every year.
And check out all of our great work at footballguys.com, including our free daily newsletter. You can sign up at footballguys.com and get all the latest news from around the NFL, and there's quite a bit, right to your inbox every single morning with opinions by me, by Sigmund Bloom, and by our boss, Joe Bryant. So check it out. It's our footballguys.com free daily newsletter available only at footballguys.com. Follow the show at the Audible on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of good stuff. And follow Sigmund Bloom at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible, saying thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned. And as always, please stay frosty.